What's up, fellow car enthusiasts? Do you want to go from making a car video that sounds like this to a video that sounds like this? Well, obviously without the miss shift into third, but hang out for a few minutes and I'll show you exactly what I've done in order to go from GoPro audio with tons of air noise and essentially not being able to hear the exhaust or intake or turbo, the induction sounds, to having a super clear video with audio that sounds like this. All right, you may be wondering, how do you do this with just a GoPro? Well, that's a pretty important part of the puzzle, and it actually starts with somewhat of an investment. I say that because if you're trying to create content that you really want people to enjoy, and really if you're creating content, you want to enjoy it yourself, because if you're a car enthusiast and you're creating videos, you're probably sharing them with your friends, but you also enjoy it yourself. There's part of the actual experience of driving that cannot be reproduced, and you love it at the time, but it's always fun to go back and watch and listen to a fun drive, backwoods drive, racing, whatever it may be. There are many different applications here. My motivation was the love of backroads driving throughout the state of Missouri. So as soon as I got my STI, I was thinking it would be so awesome to create videos that capture super high quality video, but then also layer on incredible audio. Because if you've tried recording from inside your car with the windows down, it sounds like trash. If you try recording from inside of your car with the windows up, it also sounds like trash. So, how do you find the perfect balance? As you can see, the GoPro on my car here is actually mounted on the roof, just behind the front roof rack. So what I did is take that audio and effectively strip it out of the post-production process. So the first video that you heard is the native GoPro audio. It's okay at low speeds, but once you get up to speed above like 30 miles an hour or so, the wind is just overpowering. Now, what I've done is a dual microphone setup. One mic is sitting up underneath, just underneath the hood down in this region. I'll show a picture of where I position that and how I have it kind of taped into place using gaffer's tape. I will also show you where I have it placed on the rear bumper, again using gaffer's tape so as not to mess up the paint on the car. And I'll also put some links in the description for the mixer that I used, the microphones, and the tape. Those are the three main ingredients in order to get high quality audio and begin the process of layering that on top of the video. As I mentioned before, it is somewhat of an investment. I want to say it was right around $300. I will throw a graphic up on the screen showing you exactly. This is the Zoom R4 multi-track recorder, along with a couple they're not super high-end mics, but they're also not low-end. That's the thing. You need to get microphones that are capable of capturing high-quality audio and are compatible with your multi-track recorder. As I mentioned, in this case, it's the Zoom R4. Not the highest end, not the lowest end. I think it does a pretty good job. However, that's just one half of the equation when it comes to producing high quality, clear audio content. Now, let's take a look at the audio coming out of that setup in its raw form. And I'm going to pull this down just a little bit, because if I play this at 100%, it's probably going to blow your ears off. So what I did is used Audacity. This is a free program, very easy to use, and it is available online for anyone who's willing to go through this process. There's just a few steps. They're pretty basic steps, as I will show you, but it's more of a time investment and dialing this into what you think is the best sound for your vehicle and the conditions in which you've recorded. So that's not to say this is just going to be super quick. There's a difference between simple and quick, or complex and complicated. I would say this is simple, but it's not necessarily a quick process. But if you can dial in the levels at which to record on your mics and get that set, and then come in, invest some time within Audacity doing things like loudness normalization or just track normalization in general, because as you can see, these tracks are clipping. Whenever these areas of the audio waves themselves are hitting the top and bottom of the graph, that means it's clipping. It's going above 0 decibel limit. So it's kind of pushing the bounds. The audio gets all scrambled and it sounds like trash, as you will hear. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Now, if I play that at 100%, warning, if you're wearing headphones, this may be abrupt. See what I mean? It's pushing the limits. You can see it's this red bar right here on the playback line. That means it's going above the 0 decibel limit. We want it to be right around -1 at max. Otherwise, it gets all distorted and sounds terrible. So the first step is to come in here, select all of the tracks, go to Tools, Effect, Volume and Compression, and normalize the audio to -1 decibels. And you can see immediately the tracks have now been reduced in their overall audio output level. I'm going to once again set this loop to selection. So if you're new to Audacity, you can select parts of the audio track, then come up here, right click on the time bar and do set loop to selection. And then when I press play, it's going to loop. It's going to loop over this over and over. I do that because it makes the process of fine-tuning what this file will end up sounding like much easier. I don't have to keep coming back and tweaking it and messing with it over and over. So sometimes I'll set it really short so that this loop ends up going quick. You can tell there's already a pretty massive improvement over that. But from here, I like to fine-tune it a little bit more. Sometimes it's necessary to add compression, but if you can normalize the tracks and get them to a pretty reasonable level like this, compression may not necessarily be something you have to do. But one thing I will do, I noticed that there's not as much bass on the exhaust track as I would like. So I know track number 3 on my Zoom R4 multi-track recorder is the exhaust side, and track 2 is the intake side. So I'm going to rename those just for reference. Makes it a little bit easier when I'm switching between the two. And then I'm going to select effects. And you can see right here, it applies real-time effects to the track. You can also add effects in more depth by coming over to the file menu and using these, but I don't know that it's necessarily something that needs to be done personally. The audio quality that I get with just a few minor tweaks by the real-time effects portion is sufficient, I would say. So I'm going to add an effect for bass and treble on the exhaust side. My target, just in past experience and having done this for several hours, I normally like to add about 5 to 6 decibels on the bass side and then pull out 5 or 6 on the treble side. So it gives it that throatier, deep tone, but then pulls out some of the higher end treble from the exhaust side, because that's not what I'm looking for from the exhaust. And the nice thing is, since I have a dual mic set up, I already have something right next to the turbo. It's literally sitting just on the windshield side of the hood, and it's going to pick up that turbo noise. It gets some of the induction sound. There were times when I had the mic under the hood, but it was picking up a lot of valve train noise. So that's why I chose to have it on the windshield side of the hood, actually on the exterior, just at the base of the windshield, as I'll show in a picture, as opposed to having it right next to the airbox. The downside of having the mic on the outside is obviously you're going to get some wind noise. So if you're doing a longer recording and you have cruising sound, like for example this, you'll notice there's obviously the sound of the exhaust, but you're also getting some road noise. Sometimes at higher speeds you'll get more wind noise, and that can just be generally annoying. In order to mitigate that, you can add an effect, once again bass and treble on the intake side, and pull down the treble. This will help. A little bit. Notice the difference. It's much more subtle if you're listening over desktop speakers on a computer or headphones. I've noticed the treble can be a much bigger problem if you're listening on a phone. However, if you're just doing a quick hit, something like this little section right here, there's not as much of a risk of that level of road noise coming through. And when you reduce the treble, you end up pulling out some of the pitch from the turbo itself. So I don't really like to reduce treble on the intake side of the mic when it's just a quick hit and it's not going to be cruising in the background. Here, listen. You could tell there's a relatively significant difference in terms of hearing the turbo spool and the induction noise when you have treble reduced versus leaving it at its natural state. It's entirely subjective though, so you'll need to tune this based upon your particular vehicle and how much wind is actually going to hit the mic for your setup. I just know usually I'll pull out 4 to 5 decibels of treble for my 2010 STI hatchback, and that does the trick to give me a nice balance of pulling out road noise, but also leaving enough of the turbo, that trebly whistle induction sound to make it a nice balance. One more thing that I do is I will actually pan over to the right side for the turbo. And this is kind of subtle, I would say, but the turbo is on the right side of the vehicle. The intake is all the way up on the right side of the vehicle by the wheel, the passenger side of the vehicle. Not a huge difference, but you can tell there is a nice effect of having the turbo kind of set off to the right side of the audio spectrum so that it kind of mimics what it would actually sound like when you're driving the car. That's my personal preference. It's entirely up to you. As I mentioned, this is subjective. I just know that's one of the little minor details that I like to mess with when I'm going to produce some audio. Thanks for hanging out. This video ended up being a little longer than I anticipated, but I hope it's been helpful. If you have any questions or want follow-ups, please drop a comment below. I was able to gather information from various other sources online about which equipment to use, so that's what got me started down this path. But I didn't really see much information about the actual editing and kind of fine-tuning or dialing in the audio tracks once you've recorded and then need to go combine and layer things together. If you'd like to see what the process looks like within Clipchamp, I may put out a video on that as well. If you're not familiar, Clipchamp is a program that's used, comes native with Windows 11. Very, very easy, user-friendly. However, it has a lot of limitations. So depending on how advanced you're trying to get with your setup and what you would like to accomplish, it may not be the best tool. Perhaps you'll want to look at something like Adobe Premiere. That is something I'm weighing right now. You got to pay for it. It's like $23 a month or something for Adobe. So not terrible, but unless you're making money doing this or you just have money that you want to burn, that's kind of it's an ongoing investment. You got to subscribe to that. Or I guess you could do it for a month at a time or whatever it may be. But Clipchamp comes with Windows 11 straight out of the box. Like I said, super easy to use, nice effects, obvious limitations once you start getting in there and using it and you start having further ideas about how you want to make your videos more advanced. I'll just leave it at that because I'm relatively new at all of this, but wanted to drop some information out there, a little behind the scenes. Hope it's been helpful. Take care. Peace.